In today's episode, we're doing something powerful. You're about to hear real women, high-achieving leaders, executives, and decision makers stepping into live coaching with me and get real-time clarity using my proven frameworks that I teach in all my programs. If you're new to my work, here's the foundation. We use a simple but transformational framework, which helps you to see exactly what results you're getting, why you're getting them, and how to change them. Here's how it works. Every experience in your life begins with a circumstance. A fact, something neutral that anyone could agree on, like the sky is blue. Or it's raining, right? People can't really argue with the circumstance of what's happening outside. Then instantly, your brain assigns meaning to it. That meaning becomes a thought. So for example, if the sky is blue, you might say, what a wonderful day ahead. If it's rainy, you might say, oh crap. And that thought creates a feeling, your emotional experience in that moment, right? Your feelings drive your actions. So that feeling could be, great, I'm going to enjoy and have joy in my day in the sunlight, in the blue sky. Or it could be, it's raining and this sucks, right? And I feel sad about it because I had maybe plans to walk around. So your thought and feeling drive your actions. And that action is the way you show up, the way you speak up, or sometimes shut down. So if the sky is blue, you might say, I'm going to show up outside. I'm going to speak up and call my friend and say, let's go for a walk. Or if it's raining, you might shut down and say, crap, I'm just going to stay inside and watch movies. And those actions create your results in your life, right? They create new things for you. And the magic is this. When you learn to slow down, what some of the women today beautifully describe as the executive pause, you gain the ability to notice your thoughts and choose new ones that actually serve you. It is really about being discerning and disciplined about the thoughts you are having because those thoughts drive the emotions in your body, drive the action you take. You'll hear women naming their emotions in real time, catching automatic thoughts, and having breakthroughs as we trace their experiences backwards to the thought that sparked everything. This matters because so many brilliant, capable women walk into rooms where confidence seems effortless for their male counterparts. And yet, confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build by understanding your mind and the context within you're working in. When you know how your thoughts create your results, confidence becomes something you can generate on purpose, not something you have or don't have or that you're born with or not born with. It's a practice, it's a tool, it's an understanding of what it takes to show up in a room and have empowering thoughts that generate feelings in your body. Maybe it's courage, maybe it's groundedness, maybe it's powerful. And that in turn has you doing actions, maybe standing up straighter, taking up more space, speaking up, that create results in your life. And that's what today's episode is all about. Real women, real leadership moments, real emotions, being coached live using this framework. You'll hear moments of awareness, vulnerability, awkwardness, empowerment, and those subtle but life-changing shifts that happen when you finally see your own mind with clarity. So settle in. You are about to witness what happens when high-achieving women learn to lead themselves first and rewrite the results they create in their careers and their lives. All right, go and enjoy the episode. And here's a flavor of what is in store for you if you are a woman who's ready to take on more of her own journey, her inward journey, so that she can show up even more powerfully outwardly. All right, enjoy today's show and let me know what you think about it.
Welcome to The Balanced Leader, hosted by Yan Dang, a leadership and life coach with over 20 years of corporate experience. Drawing from her journey as a former global finance leader and second-generation immigrant, Yan understands the unique challenges women face in male-dominated workplaces. Each episode offers insights on balancing masculine and feminine energies, mastering soft skills, and building emotional intelligence. Join us to transform frustration into empowerment and unlock your authentic leadership potential.
So we've been working together a while, and one of the things that you taught that is really useful is to notice the feeling and name it, call it out. And that's very useful in dealing with other people. But, when you name that feeling and then you do something to improve your grounding, you can think more clearly. But one of the things we don't do is go like backwards and reassess, oh, what thoughts created that feeling? Like we do one on one, right? But when I'm in the moment and this is happening, I don't like go back and why am I thinking this? And maybe that's not important because what's important is becoming grounded and getting logic in there and having that executive presence more so than figuring out why that emotion came up.
Well, I think both are important, right? And it's like mastering different level skills. If you can name the thought, and there's some questions, do thought comes first or do feelings come first? I think either one is actually just important in itself because your thought or your feeling is both going to dictate the action. But it is like you can, first of all, just naming your emotion and sensing it in your body is like a skill of awareness. And noticing your thoughts is a skill of awareness. But tracking back is like a next level skill to actually ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I making this mean? Because the context of where we are and we're making meaning out of things all the time. And so if you can ask yourself that question, what am I making this statement mean about me or about the situation, then it can also slow you down to notice, oh, is that the correct assumption? Do I like that choice that I'm making? Is it actually true? Can I reality check it? So, is there an example that you have? I know it was just Thanksgiving. Were there things that came up where you had an emotion and we can track back to what the thought was as well?
Well, it was more just in general a comment. I mean, feelings are something, obviously, you feel them. So they're very noticeable. My main thought was like, the thought may be so fast, you don't catch it. Like they happen at the same time, the thought and the feeling, but the feeling is what you notice. You don't necessarily notice the thought. I know, like, the example, and I think it just depends on the situation too, if you're observing or interacting, right? On that feeling. Because if you're observing, you have time to think. But if you're on the hot seat and someone said something and you are supposed to respond, you're stressed and you don't always have time.
Exactly. And I talk about this, it's like a practice, right? The more you practice the skill of tracking yourself, the better you'll get at it. It's kind of like when you're doing yoga, right? When you're first learning the moves, you're like, okay, let me learn what the move is and how to do it. Then after a while, you start learning how to understand your body in a way of like what's actually getting stretched, or like you can build on top of it. And so the people, right, if you're starting to practice this skill, you'll start catching it. Just like practicing, some people just have to start with emotions. Like literally a lot of people, you ask them if they have an emotion, they'll say, I'm tired. Like there's not, right? So even having the language to say, I feel angry, I feel hurt, I feel scared. And then that like pause to slow down and to say, oh, what is the thought that I'm having right now?
I said you don't have time to process. And actually, it's a false belief. I caught myself in that.
But that's good. See, so you're starting to catch yourself. And I think I've shared, if I haven't shared with you, there are men that are really good about doing this in high stake meetings. I've gone to school with that on to them and I've like noticed how can they do that? Like I've literally in meetings where men are like, hey, hang on a minute. And they're like literally telling everybody, like, hang on, like I'm catching up with myself and let me write the story. If there's like a narrative that's playing out in the meeting and they're like, hang on a minute, these aren't the facts. Like, let me write the story, but they have to like be noticing themselves and the room in order to do that. Or recently, one of my clients brought something to her CEO and he was not ready for it. And he said, I'm not prepared to talk about this at this time. So he just bought himself a whole lot of space because he was noticing lots of thoughts and feelings that he was probably like, I shouldn't act on this. This is a very highly valuable person in front of me. She's asking for a lot more things. And I'm feeling uncomfortable. And he knew enough to say, I'm not ready to have this conversation. And it was very professional, but it gave him space, right? We need to learn the words to help us give ourselves space in some of those moments where we're like, you know, I need to let me slow down, like, let me slow myself down and start to notice like what other context, what other stuff is actually happening in the moment. But you just caught yourself, which is great, right? You just caught yourself telling yourself an assumption. And now oh, I feel fear. I feel like I have to answer right away, which is not true.
Well, I think the takeaway is executive pause is like a tagline. Like that's kind of like a key phrase to trigger when I feel like I need to react. And mentally, if I think executive pause, in addition to the breathing, naming the feeling, right? It can slow me down if I'm feeling that urge to just say something immediately because everyone's looking at me, waiting for an answer. That's very stressful.
Yeah. And then you just want to react. And sometimes our gut reaction is continuing to create patterns that are contagious, right? Like fights with our family members. It's like the circular thing. Versus if you can pause and start intercepting yourself. And one of the things I like to personally say to myself when I'm feeling a lot of fear is that I like to say, I have a choice. Because part of what's happening in my brain is like somehow I feel like I don't have a choice and there's a lot of fear. But if I can remind myself I have a choice, then I can start tracking. Yeah. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that like really resonated with me. I was in a bad relationship once, and I don't want to get into these details, but when it felt overwhelming, the thing that got me through it was just telling myself I have a choice. I can walk out the door at any moment. So that was really empowering to like get through some really tough times.
Yeah. And who can relate?
I'm really getting a lot out of like what you've been saying the last, like the leadership lab and that executive pause. I was in a situation on Wednesday where this is slightly traumatic, but I went to the coffee shop and I was just ordering my coffee, and there was somebody. I live in a small town, and I had a really public facing job that I was fired from recently. And it was very, very public. Facebook, everybody, knows what they think on Facebook. And someone had made a comment on Facebook. This is couple months ago now, about a month and a half ago now. So this woman was in the coffee shop and she's like, "Hey, just congratulations on your new job. And I just want to apologize for my husband and what he said on Facebook." And I had no idea what she was talking about. And so I'm kind of like thinking, and I was like, okay. And then like it sort of hit me, and I knew exactly what she was talking about. I knew exactly the comment that she was talking about. And I just looked at her and I was like, "Oh, are you married to?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Huh, okay. Well, you're going to have to give me a minute to process this information." And I felt like, I mean, if I hadn't maybe had that, I'm not sure exactly what I would have responded to her. It ended up that I didn't yell at her or anything, but I was really upset. Like I started crying and it was a terrible situation. She was trying to comfort me and hug me, and I didn't want to touch her and all this stuff. But basically, this guy said that I should have been in jail for a baseball stadium that I had to take down that was condemned. And I'm like, giving her all of these pieces about like I didn't make the decision solely on my own. And
What was that your thought in that moment?
yeah.
Like where you're like kind of telling her the story.
Yeah, I just felt, I remember being very aware and present of how I was feeling. And it was very triggering for me. It was a very traumatic conversation. I started shaking physically. I was crying, like it was a whole scene in this coffee shop. And I was fine with it because like it was what it was, but we ended up having a nice conversation about it. And I think she just assumed that I knew that she was connected to this person. And so she was trying, from her end, she was trying to make the situation better because she felt so bad about what this man had written about me on Facebook. In reality, it wasn't, I was ready to move past it. But, it worked out in the moment. I just really remember thinking, I'm being very aware of how I feel in this moment based on some of the training I feel like you've given.
Yeah. And what I want to offer to you is like, your mind might be like, I'm past it, but your emotions might say, I'm still processing it. And she may have been a trigger to help you process it, right? And actually a nurturing, figure because she actually wanted to apologize for her husband. And you stepped into the vulnerability of it by allowing yourself to be superhuman in that moment, to actually have emotions and to allow those things to express themselves, which is really about healing and processing.
Yeah. And I did think like it's okay to like, especially in a situation, maybe like that, you can't really control how you're gonna feel. It was very surprising for me. I was not prepared for that. I did not have that on my bingo card for Wednesday before Thanksgiving to like go through this situation. But it was helpful for me to learn like, okay, I am still processing the entire situation. I am still like, getting through that. And it is helpful to like have to be in the moment. It is what it is, and let's move on and learn from it. And we're getting there.
Yeah. And I just want to like reflect on you to just even be saying, like, I had a very public job, I got fired from it. Like, just very matter of fact, like that, I'm sure there was processing to get to this point, but
Yeah.
there's no shame. There's no like holding your head down. There's just you being you. What's coming up for you? I'm noticing some emotion.
Well, it was a really difficult situation. I obviously am still trying to get through it. So I was wrongfully terminated, which I'm suing them for. But I mean, it's fine. It's just I loved it so much. And I really gave my heart and soul to the city that I grew up in. And so to have dealt with that, it's not just me. I mean, it was the 100% of our senior leadership was turned over in 14 months by our city council. So
The fact that this woman went out of her way to apologize, to see
yeah,
you as a human person, who's
yeah.
like, there's a human person on the sides of these things, to have that interaction and for you to step in and be that human person, not just be like a political figure who's like, whatever.
Hmm.
That just shows who you are and the way you lead.
Yeah, thanks.
So good going though for noticing that and to allow yourself to be with the emotions. Because if you notice, there are some leaders that will literally say, "Whoa, I'm like taken aback by," like they're like they like let people know they're having feelings. They know, and
Hmm.
those feelings actually build more trust and rapport. It's like I'm a human person. Like I'm still processing that, right? Like it lets people know we're not just like AI robots talking to each other, right? We're actually human beings. And this
Hmm.
is where that connection happens and the trust happens and the connection with ourselves and other people. So,
Yeah, I think people find that surprising about me particularly, and some things I've shared with you, Yan, is that, I can be very sort of emotionless, and so when I do show emotion to people in, like, my professional world, they're always like, "Whoa!" So, they're always surprised, and so that's good because it shows that vulnerability and that you have the softer side to you that I usually don't show people.
yeah. And this is huge because you showed people you were in public, you showed, so
Mhm.
I think this is definitely a win for you in terms of, owning all the parts of you, not just the parts that you have perceived as the strong parts of you.
Mhm.
I would embrace the emotions that come up, not push them away, because then that
Mhm.
will actually have you processing them.
Yes, yeah,
Well, good going.
thanks.
Hey, podcast listeners, I wanted to pause here and tell you about something powerful I'm offering that's already helping women move from surviving leadership to commanding it. If you've ever found yourself over explaining, second guessing, or working harder than feels sustainable just to get the influence you deserve, you're not alone. And it's not because you lack ability or talent. And that's exactly why I created Command, a 6-month leadership accelerator and mastermind for women who are ready to show up with clarity, composure, and unapologetic authority. In Command, we move beyond theory and into weekly high-impact coaching, real-world strategy, and a community of women who are leading, rising, and opening doors for one another. You'll learn how to regulate your nervous system under pressure, communicate with precision, build strategic relationships, and design your next big opportunity, all without burning out. If you're interested in joining or want to learn more, I'd love to connect with you. You can schedule a complimentary 30-minute consult call with me at the link in the show notes. Let's explore whether Command is the right next step for your leadership journey. All right, who's next?
I'll share just to, and by the way, I think that framework is really simple, but actually very on point. I think from my own experience, I feel like I go through this every day, multiple times, especially collaborating with senior leaders. And there's times where there's difference of opinions, right? And so you're put into these situations where you have to take a step back and observe the situation, the circumstance. And then these thoughts go through my head. Should I say this or should I hold back or should I wait So it's all these thoughts that go through your head because I tend to maybe overanalyze people in terms of their body language, their tone, and pick up on cues on what things maybe trigger them. And that helps me to pivot the conversation. And there's times where I do hold myself back because I think about sort of, is this really going to be helpful or is this really going to create more friction? But then I think about how I want to action it. And sometimes I vent with, somebody else who will give me some honest feedback. So that's kind of just how I kind of process this. There's been times where, yes, the emotions, you know, come out. And I remember a situation where I was really frustrated about an incident that happened that nobody had shared with me, but that it impacted my team. And I think why I was very emotional was because my leadership team knew except me, and no one came to me to tell me. I feel like I lost that trust.
And you heard about it through your team? Is that how did you hear?
I heard about it, yeah. Yeah. And so I'm the type of person that it takes a lot to rebuild the trust. I move on, but it's that trust piece that takes a long time to be rebuilt. And maybe this is my just personal way of trying to manage through the emotions. But
Well, it is a way of protecting ourselves, right? Like when we feel like trust has been breached, we want to create space for ourselves to understand. And was there any repair that happened? Did you let your leadership team know, or what was that like?
I don't know, it was kind of weird because it was kind of addressed, but then just moved on very quickly without really like taking a deeper dive and understanding, okay, do you understand how I'm feeling and why this is important to me? I don't feel like that really was just move on,
Yeah. And how did that leave you? With more distrust, or how did that?
Well, it was, obviously very frustrating. I think that's where the loss and the trust started.
Well, and here's like if you backtrack it, the trust, and I'm hearing some hurt and anger, maybe some of the emotions, but the thought, right? The thought is, I can't trust them, or the thought is like, they don't hear me, or the thought is, they don't care, right? Like there's like multiple layers and there's like different trust levels in that.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, thanks for sharing so vulnerably. But I think this is like the power of that. What you're talking about too is in these high stress situations, right? Oftentimes we're reading the room. But what do we know? If we know that, like, kind of ahead of time, we might be having some of these thoughts, we can self coach ourselves ahead of that too, to notice, like, oh, I'm going to want to not speak up because it's scary, but I'm going to force myself if I think it's going to move the conversation forward. And so you get yourself on like a different thought pattern and anticipate where you're going to, push the brakes on yourself, because it's just a natural way that we operate to feel safe, but doesn't help us to expand or to be seen. Or
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Hey, Anne, did you have a framework that you shared?
Yeah, I did. That's just the framework. It's the circumstance that happens, the thought, feelings. And so something happens, it's neutral again. It could be, it could just be like some neutral thing that happened. It's just something. Even like somebody dying is a neutral circumstance before we have a thought about it. So it's just like sort of, this is what's happened, what it is. And then it's the thought we have about it. And what I'm letting people know is that you have a choice to decide which thought you want to hold on to. So, you can hold on to a certain thought and attach yourself to it. And then there's feelings, and those thoughts and feelings necessitate actions that we take and results that we create in the world. And you can do this both from a forward thinking of like, oh, this thing is going to happen, right? I'm going to be in this room. Or you can look at it retroactively, like retroactively. Sometimes I'll like dissect fights that I've had with my husbands. Like, what happened? Not husband's husband. I'll be like, what happened? How did that stack? How did we get so defensive and angry so quickly? And usually when you start tracking back, you realize that it didn't happen so quickly. It happened in all these like little micro things that stacked up.
My question is, the point of this right now simply to observe it? Or is this also getting into how we then want to communicate about it? Because I've had a couple scenarios I mean, I have a million scenarios probably, but the two that are coming to mind at the moment, one was in a corporate setting where, well, remember with as a franchise owner with the corporate franchisor, and it's a little bit more of a reaction to how they have already, treated us, but also then anticipating where I can see this going. So like if they're asking me for my thoughts on a certain process, but I already know how this is going. And sure enough, time and time again, I've been proven correct that yes, I am correct, that this is how they will behave. And maybe that's not okay with me. So I'm all triggered. But I think one thing I sort of realized was I can observe my emotional triggers. I can observe my behavior. I can stay more grounded, but I don't think that was going to result in a different outcome. And I think that can be a tough situation because I think that we're probably all of us here are here to learn and are here to improve ourselves. And we think that when we do this, we're going to have a better outcome. But I think I kind of was wondering if you can speak to those scenarios where you're like, no, the outcome is maybe not going to change. It's just that you're going to be in more control. That's what I'm sort of feeling here.
Well, yeah. So let's break it down. What is the circumstance? What happens? Like they ask you for information, they make a request. What's that?
Basically, they started a franchise, they started too early and they didn't offer any guidance or playbook. So then it was on the centers to create it. So we did. We became the number one center by a significant lead.
Yeah.
And so what they would do is they would ask us for processes or we'd have discussions and then there would be zero recognition, whether that's monetary or even just a shout out, like, hey, shout out to the Virginia Center, the Woodbridge, like, and they would just start using our things. But the thing is, there was and continues to be plenty of room for them to give us like a proper platform, whether it be in an advisory council or whatever. They finally did that. And the rate was so below what, I think what's market standard. It just did not seem fair. And when we would try to have a conversation about it, I like direct conversation and I could not make the conversation direct despite my every effort. They were always able to make it vague somehow. And I'm like, I don't think I'm being vague. It was gaslighting, where I'm sitting here and I'm like, I think I'm being pretty clear. Like, I want to offer you XYZ. So you're asking me for my processes or my thoughts, but actually I can create the entire platform for you and I would share it. But no, just like you're not giving me anything for free, I don't want to give it to you for free. Like,
Yeah.
in fact, I am paying you a royalty fee and I am also creating the platform.
Assets of IP for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just became a frustrating conversation over and over again. And one thing, and because we do talk about men a lot in the room, one thing I found really interesting was that I grew up on a trading desk. And so, yeah, there really wasn't a lot of room for emotions and feelings, but men have so many emotions and feelings.
They do. They have lots of feelings. And it's okay.
They flat out said they don't feel that you're giving them credit. And I'm like, I'm not giving you credit for my work that you should have given me. Yeah, no, I'm not. But also I'm paying you a royalty fee. That is your credit. It's actually built into the structure. So it was just like a really weird, like they wanted credit, but for what I was creating, it was really bizarre. And it was like it was messing up my mind.
Okay. Well, it does sound like there is probably a thread, right? They want credit. You both want credit. And it's like how to make it a win-win. But if we zoom out and look at like the circumstance from your perspective, sounds like they want something from you. And your thought is that this isn't fair. This is not a win for me. I'm not getting what I need. And so there could be like feelings. Is that like, what's the feeling that comes up when you think like, this isn't fair?
Yeah. And also to offer the proper context, for the longest time, I wanted to give it to them. So it was like I saw the vision so clearly, like even before I actually did it and had the numbers to prove it. So maybe I was asking for something. I wanted them to allow me and to bring me in to help create things for them, like processes, let's say. And they were like, yeah, we love that. But you could tell, I think it was too much for them. Maybe they couldn't see the vision.
Yeah.
And then when they could, I think it felt a little bit like, well, yeah, if you want to do this, then do it. Like, and I was like, no, just allow me, bring me in, let me do this for you. And let's work out some deal where somehow I'm getting some kind of compensated appropriately for this. And if you don't see, that's fine, but then be very clear, Rupal, we don't have the bandwidth for that right now. or blah, blah, blah. But it was always like, yeah, but what's stopping you? Why don't you share? Why don't, and that's like, yeah, I felt like I was being taken advantage of, but also purposely not seen, like on purpose. Like they would promote, even now, they take stuff from our center all the time and they only highlight the bottom 10 performing percenters. And at first I thought, well, maybe that's a strategy, right? Let's encourage the other people. After a while, you're like, you know what? I recognize a pattern when I see one, and it just wasn't a good fit. But I think that the other thought I have here is that, like, is this my fault somehow in the way that I was supposed to them,
Okay, well, here's what I want to offer for you in terms of like, because there's these thought patterns. There's like, they're taking advantage of me. And then there's also your thought of like, did I do something wrong?
I was like, maybe it's the way I would speak to them because I went into ball buster mode. So I feel like, oh, it's probably if I was easier to work with, then, maybe that's what the problem is.
I don't think that's actually really empowering thought for you. But what I want to offer you is like the go forward thought of like how to make this a win-win for both of us, where you feel like you are getting what you want. Because the thought of like, I'm going to be taken advantage of, it actually doesn't have you reading in a way where you're like, we can all win. There's a lot of money to be made here, but these are and for you to be really clear and consistent, they may not be. I know you want them to be, but they may not be. Like a lot of people will not want to say, we don't have the bandwidth, we feel highly threatened, blah, 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 blah. But if you're super clear of like, this is how it would work for us, and this is the value that it would give to you, like how we can make this, like even if the thought was, this is a win-win for all of us. And how do you feel when you think about having it as a win-win for all? Like, what's the feeling that comes up in your body when you think this can be a win-win for all of us?
It feels great. It feels aligned. It feels like, yeah, I'm invested in this. You're invested in this.
We're in bed together. What do we got to figure it out, right?
It's just such a like waste of potential.
Well, and this is where I think that thought keeps having you have that thought, you're getting like, it's not working out. You're not, on the same page. The thought is like, I'm being taken advantage of, or we are being taken advantage of. It continues that cycle, and it will create the same sort of cycle. Versus, I mean, even if your thought was like, I'm going to succeed no matter what, is more empowering than that.
Yeah.
So just watching where those thoughts are of like, I think there's one of just expressing your frustration and validating your frustration. And then there's the using this to move forward and say, what if I showed up in this meeting to be really on point with like, this is going to be a win for all of us. And I'm going to intentionally move everybody towards that goal, no matter what. And maybe they don't want to go, but at least you came with more of that thought, which is much more grounded and balanced and a win for everybody versus expecting to be, because if you expect to be taken advantage of, you will show up with the defensiveness. And that defensiveness will cause you to potentially be less clear, explaining more, other patterns that you don't like to have,
No, I think that's on point. That's right. Because from a awareness perspective, that thought, the one you offered, is a lot more open, and you feel like a sense of ease. Whereas the minute you think someone's going to take advantage of you, I mean, that's like flight or fight, right? So you're really contracted and defensive. And I have played around with both because, I mean, like, I'm here for a reason. I reflect a lot. So I had played around with like trying a different persona on, but then if I was met with, something that wasn't
some sort of rejection.
Yeah, I would contract even more. So I think the work is like not worrying about how they react to it, but trying to see like, what can I still do to just bring my best? And obviously at some point, in order to have that open feeling, like I have to give up on what their reaction is going to be.
Yes. And they may say yes and not seem happy about it, but that's still, you get to win. You still get to be like, okay, like this is, I mean, you can be a baby about it and we can still move forward. Like you probably walked out of situations where people aren't happy, but this is the best outcome,
Yeah.
And that's okay. We're not in the business of managing other people's emotions. We're in the business of understanding them to get our point across. But some people will begrudgingly say yes to something, but that's on them, right? Like you've got your piece of the thing to move people towards. But I think for you, it's like that intentionality. Because if you're playing the game of I'm being, taken advantage of, that's a game that's like, probably not fun for you. Versus if your game is we're going to all win or I'm going to get satisfied no matter what. like we're going to move forward. There's just a more empowered way of that trajectory.
Like this is already good. And then I think what becomes tough then is like, okay, now I have this new thought process, but you got to keep doing the things to support that, right? Like, so
Yes.
and that's a whole other thing. Like, as you move along with the other party, like, where do you say no? Where do you draw the line? Like, because like now you go in with this like more open mindset. And so they maybe react better to you. So they're like, yeah, they invite you onto another meeting where they're just like, hey, tell us everything you've created. And I don't know, like then you kind of have to decide like, yeah, I'm going to be open here and I'm going to have a nice thought process. And I'm not going to also let you take advantage of me.
Exactly. There's just like this discernment, right? We can all win, and I will not abandon myself ever.
Yeah.
And there's just like that, like continual piece of playing that game. And it may also require you to speak up and say things that don't work for you. Like it may require you to say, okay, that works for me, or no, actually, this doesn't work for me, and here's why. And to give yourself some room to be able to, not say it nicely. I think part of you wants to say it nicely and wants it to land nicely, but sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it. Like, I think I want this ideal outcome where I do all of these things and it's received well.
Which is not, I mean, the reality is like if you're leading in spaces that weren't really built for you, people are always going to have different, you're going to have the people that are like, wow, you're amazing. I'm so glad you're here. And then you're going to have the people, however you show up, leadership is polarizing. You're going to get people that love you and you're going to get people that don't like you, don't like your style, don't like your leadership. And that's the price you pay to command. You get to command, right? You get to be the person making the decisions.
Maybe that's the real thought, that like I'm not going to be liked in this scenario.
Yeah, and like how would it feel to give yourself that permission to not be liked? Because there is like, especially for women, it's like, do you want to be liked or you want to be respected? And really, I always bring it down to like self-respecting yourself, liking yourself so much and respecting yourself so much that you make those choices in a discerning way, but most importantly for to empower yourself.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So there you have it. That was a leadership coaching call that I did with a group of women, of course, sharing their real stories and how they're impacted when they slow down, think about themselves, track back to the thoughts and feelings that they were having and the results that they were creating in their lives. So let me know how this episode hit you and go out and practice this yourself. And come back and share with me what you're learning. I'd love to hear from you. I would love to coach you. If this is something you want more of in your life, please check out my latest offerings. All right, have a beautiful day ahead. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for being a part of the Balanced Leader community. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and actionable. For more resources and to connect with Jan, visit us at aspire-coaching.co. Until next time, keep leading with confidence and purpose.
Hey, before you go, if what you heard today resonated and you're ready to step into greater levels of presence, influence, and strategic confidence, remember, I'd love to talk to you about my signature program, Command, an accelerator and mastermind for women who lead. Visit the link in the show notes to book your free 30-minute consultation call with me and learn more about how Command can help you lead with clarity, power, and purpose. Enrollment is open now for Command and it closes January 5th. We kick off with our very first call on January 6, 2026. Let's build your next chapter of leadership together.